Hi friends, Evolving Guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for following along with our collection journey. So today's video, I'm going to talk through a recent trade that I pulled off with one of my local game stores, and I really am curious your thoughts. I'm curious if you think I got a good deal, if you would have done this trade, and also just I'll talk through some of my thinking about just trades in general. And I really am super curious because even though I've been collecting for I don't know, 5 years or so now, I'm still like new to these kind of bigger trades. And so anyway, I've got the cards here in front of you. These are the cards that I ended up trading for. And so I'm going to show those kind of one at a time in a minute. But first, I just want to set up the trade a little bit for you. So one of the motivations of this trade was the fact that I have built up a sealed collection over the years, and like many of you may have experienced, like there gets to be a point where you have to kind of prune or trim that sealed collection. And I think when I was new to the hobby, I was very excited and my eyes were probably bigger than my wallet, so to speak. Not in a way that I spent too much or got into debt or anything, but I didn't have a guide to my sealed collection. And so I was kind of buying everything or a little bit of everything. And so part of it is just like going back through the sealed stuff that I accumulated a while back and just trying to, kind of weed out or prune that. And the stuff that I traded that I'll talk through is all celebrations. And so if you know, celebrations was the 25th anniversary of Pokemon in 2021, and it was a much anticipated release. They had a number of products released in waves, but it was the fall of 2021. It was right after Evolving Skies came out. I remember Celebrations came out in the fall of that year. And yeah, I just was, it was really fun to find Celebrations on store shelves. It was, in some products were hard to find, like the Ultra Premium collection in particular was actually not super well stocked. And so that was actually pretty hard to find if you were lucky enough to get it on a store shelf. But otherwise, stuff was pretty relatively readily available. And I just started just picking up a lot of Celebrations stuff for my sealed collection. And so all the stuff I'm going to talk through that I just traded for these cards is Celebrations. And so one piece of good news is that nothing that I traded, it was my last item of that. So I still have more Celebrations in my sealed collection. Everything that I traded, I have more of them in my sealed collection. And so it's not like I have any regret that I got rid of my very last item, for example, but it was just trying to prune. I had, multiples of several things. And so was trying to maybe just, instead of having, 4 of each of these items, maybe to scale back to 2 of those. And so finding some ways to move those forward. The other motivation is that, as you know, if you follow this channel, I'm a master set collector. I'm working on every master set, beginning with the beginning of the Sword and Shield era. So Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. The Sword and Shield era, I was collecting during that era. And I've done really well. I'm getting down to the point where I just have a handful of cards left in Sword and Shield that I still need for my sealed collection. But isn't it not surprising that many of those cards that I still need are really those chase cards? They're those expensive alt arts, and those are cards that I just was never lucky enough to pull. And they were even expensive at the time, and of course they've only gotten more expensive over time. And so it is a little bit of a conundrum to know, like, how am I going to add those to my collection, because I'm not necessarily just going to go out and drop hundreds or even thousands of dollars on singles. And so this is one creative way to take sealed product that I have that I'm willing to move on from, and then essentially turn that sealed product into singles that I want. And so I feel like that's kind of a win-win. The next question is like getting value, right? You want to get value for your stuff. You're always going to get a percentage if it's a local store, because they obviously need a margin, and I understand that. And so then it's a question of just like, if you're interested in doing a trade, shopping around or even negotiating or talking to your local game stores or people that you might want to do a trade with. Now, there are other options for trades. Facebook Marketplace is one option. Then you don't have to worry about fees. I guess for me personally, I just get a little nervous about Facebook Marketplace. Again, I think probably 99.9% of people are totally above the board and trustworthy, but even it's that story or two that you hear about an encounter on Facebook Marketplace, it just makes me a little nervous. I don't know, maybe I'm just more risk averse about just, especially when you start dealing with higher value items, dealing with, showing up, meeting a stranger, even if it's in a public place. And if you've done all your due diligence, it still can be, I don't know, for me, a little nerve wracking. And so I'd prefer to deal with a known entity like a local game store, even if it means I'm going to take a little bit of a cut, or they're going to take a little bit of a cut, and it's going to eat into perhaps a percentage that I could get back. The other option is to sell it yourself. I do have eBay stores. I do actually sell locally at some vendor malls. But in both cases, they're going to take a percentage. It's between 10 and 20%, depending on the outlet. And so, if you're selling on eBay, you're paying a percentage, you're going to have to also figure out shipping. And it's your time. And then you also can list something and then you might have to wait a while. So it's not always instant gratification. That's the same way with selling at some of my local vendor malls. They're taking a percentage and you're also paying to rent that space. And so, basically when you figure in that percentage, you're going to be paying between 10 and 20% anyway. And so in this case, so with this local game store, a lot of times local game stores, they really vary a lot in what they offer you. And you can probably speak to that experience. I think with single cards, my local game stores go anywhere from 50% store credit up to 70% store credit. In this case, it's a local game store. I knew they had this particular interest in Celebrations. And so I was able to negotiate that he offered me 80% of market price for these items. And so I felt like that was a pretty good return. Again, it's not 100% that I could get potentially. But also the nice thing is that they have cards in stock that I'm interested in. They have cards like on the shelf that I want to trade for. And so just to work out that one-to-one versus like if I sold it and then I have the cash, but then I have to turn that into the cards that I want. So this is a little bit cleaner in the sense that I'm negotiating directly with one storefront. So that's a little bit of the kind of my thought process when it comes to this. And hopefully it's kind of a win-win. So as far as what I traded, I don't have photos of that. I'm not like super slick with video editing, but I will talk through really quickly the things that I offered. Again, I did mention it's Celebration stuff. So I did have kind of the centerpiece of the trade as a Celebrations Ultra Premium collection. I do have others of those set aside for my sealed collection. So like I said, it's not my last one, but I did have one that I felt like I could part with. The good news is that Celebrations is having a moment right now. And so the valuation of that has gone up a lot. And so I feel like it could continue to go up. Of course, we don't know the future, but I feel like I remember it kind of for years, the Celebrations UPC was kind of in that 400-ish range. Maybe occasionally it would bump up to 500, but recently it's had a moment and it was valued, market price of the UPC was over $700 at the time of the trade. So my valuation, my sort of 80% was close to $600 that I was getting in trade value for the Celebrations UPC, which feels, again, really good, especially for a product that for a long time was sort of hovering in that $400 to $500 range. And also considering the fact that I paid MSRP for it 5 years ago. And so, to pay $120 for something, end up with $600 of value in a trade feels really strong to me. I also had 2 of the Celebrations Amazon Prime collections. These were kind of less known and they were kind of Amazon exclusive products and they just had other it was kind of a package deal. It was a nice box with the Celebrations logo and it had other Celebrations products inside of it. But I had a couple of those I was willing to part with, and those I was getting valued at 80% of market on those was around $100 each. I had a Pikachu VMAX premium figure collection, if you remember those with the big chunky chew with the lightning bolt above him. Those are like really large boxes. They're kind of awkward, actually. They take up a lot of space. So I had one of those I was able to move on from. That one also, the 80% value there is around $100. I had a Pikachu V-Union Premium Playmat collection, if you remember that product. I also had just a regular V-Union special collection. Those were a little bit less. They're still market price, but 80% of those is, I think, around $80 and $70 respectively. I also had one mini tin, just a random Innova mini tin that I was able to add to this. And then the last thing, and maybe the other centerpiece of the trade, was a Celebrations Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer box. Now, I do have others of those in my seal collection. I got those at the time. I don't think we knew at that time like they would go as crazy as they have. Now, the one problem with the one that I had is that it has a small tear in the plastic. And so I wasn't even sure that they would take it in, but they actually took it in and I felt like they gave me a pretty good value for it. They didn't give me 100% market price, but I forget now, actually, they discounted market price, but just a little bit. And so I felt pretty good about the fact that not only did they take it, but I got pretty good value because, again, as sealed collectors, I can see how you might not want this, even though it is a Celebrations UPC and it's pristine except for this tear. But that's kind of the risk. With so many sealed products, just this thin piece of plastic is the difference between maybe like hundreds of dollars of valuation. But anyway, that was the package that I put together. And so altogether, the reason this began is that they had a few cards in stock that I noticed appeared in their case. Their cards, they were chase cards. They were alt art chase cards that I needed from Sword and Shield. And I just thought maybe this is an opportunity to take some of this sealed stuff that I've been kind of moving on from and, to work out this trade. And so, like I said, I sort of started with the idea of I had some cards in mind. I knew what they were being valued at. And so I tried to put together a package of celebration stuff that I was able to move, that I was willing to move on from, that would get me the kind of valuation that I needed to be able to, turn into the cards that I wanted. So in the end, I actually ended up with a little bit, because they did end up taking the UPC, the exclusive UPC, I had a little bit more value than I realized, and so I was able to add a couple extra cards. But in the end, I turned all of that stuff, which is like, a bunch of boxes. It took up a couple bins, all that volume. Just think of like I had two kind of bins full of collection boxes of different kinds. I was able to turn all that space into just 4 cards. And so now I'm going to show you these 4 cards, and we'll talk through them a little bit. And I'm just really curious, like, would you have done this trade? Are there any considerations that I'm missing? Now, the first card is the least exciting one. This is just, I had about $40 kind of, once I got the cards in that I wanted, I still had about $40 of value. And so I just kind of looked in their case and picked, the card that I could find that it's not maybe the most exciting card, but it just was worth the right amount of money. And so this is the Terapagos EX from Prismatic Evolutions. It's one of the SIRs from Prismatic. Now, this card is not like necessarily a chase card for me. I'm just starting now to work on the SIRs from Prismatic. It's not top of my list as far as collections go, but again, this card just happened to be, it was in the case, it was in stock, and it happened to be valued at the right amount for what I needed to kind of get up to like the value of what I brought in to trade. And so anyway, I was happy to add this just as, again, just kind of a down payment on those SIRs from Prismatic. Those are going to take a long time to collect because there's so many of them and they're so expensive, but at least I started with that. So that's the first one, maybe a little bit less exciting. Maybe we'll set that up here. The next card that I picked up is the Charizard VMAX Rainbow Rare from Champion's Path. Now, this is a card, I only have Champion's Path as a set really just has the 2 chase cards, the 2 Charizards. Everything else in that set is like $5 and under, or maybe $10 and under at most. And so it's really just those 2 chase cards. Now, Champion's Path is a funny set because I've actually literally never opened a pack of Champion's Path. It was out before I started collecting, and then it kind of was one of those sets, I think, during the pandemic, kind of a little bit before and during the pandemic, where just prices on sealed stuff was just crazy and it was just hard to find. It's also a specialty set, so it doesn't have booster boxes or individually sleeved booster packs. So I've never opened Champion's Path. It was unrealistic that I would ever get enough packs of Champion's Path to make it worth ripping them to try to search for these cards. And so anyway, the 2 Charizards were just 2 cards that I knew I was going to want for my sealed collection. So this is one of the cards they did happen to have. It wasn't necessarily like on my short list. I mean, it is on my short list in the sense it's one of the cards I still need. But I actually looked past it initially and was going to pass on it. And then I thought, well, maybe I will go for it because it is still, again, it's a card I need from Sword and Shield, and there aren't too many of them left. The thing that I'm realizing, I took a closer look. I looked at it in store, of course. This is kind of, it's not totally an afterthought card, but it was just like they happen to have it. And sometimes it's hard. I feel like it's the only copy in the case. And, condition is a real interesting question because you're trading all this like sealed stuff in for these cards. And so you, on one hand, of course, you want to make sure that these cards are in really good condition. I think one of the interesting questions is, does it need to be like gradable at a 10 to pull the trigger? And I'm curious if that is would be your standard. Now, I'm not planning on grading these cards. These are for my personal master set collection. These are not for grade. Now, on one hand, you still want, all things equal, I want as good a copy as I can possibly get. But on the other hand, I don't know. Part of me just, there's a drive to have this card in my collection, even if it's not going to grade at a 10. With the fact that you're spending a lot of money on a small piece of cardboard and you do want it to be in as best shape as possible, which includes both the condition and the centering. So anyway, this card, I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but it was not until I got it home and took a closer look at it that I realized that it actually does have some whitening on the top. It's not like so noticeable, but if you look really closely, and it actually does have a little bit of damage along the top edge, which, I paid market price for this, which at the time of the trade was $155. And so I don't know, it's maybe a lesson learned to just be super, super, super inspecting of these cards. I don't think they were trying to he let me look at it. He let me spend the time with the card that I wanted. So I don't feel like in that sense, it was up to me. He wasn't trying to push this particular card on me. And I'm really glad I do have this for my collection. It is a box I can check. It is going to go in the binder, and it does give me 1 card closer to a master set of Champion's Path. But I don't know. In retrospect, I probably should have taken a little bit closer look. at the condition of the card. So this is one that, I don't know, there might be a tinge of regret with this particular card just because of the condition of it. Again, I'm not planning on grading it, and it does like check a box for me. But anyway, so that's the Charizard VMAX Rainbow Rare from Champion's Path. So now we're on to the real like heavy hitters. These are the two cards that I really kind of had my eye on. They were in the case initially, and they're the cards that I really wanted to grab. And so you might have already guessed, one of them is the Giratina V Alt Art from Lost Origin. This is obviously a super hot card. You know, the artist is like, you know, everything this artist touches is like pure gold right now. So this is a card that, again, I of course have chased it for a long time. I've opened a lot of Lost Origin. I've never been lucky enough to pull it. And it's just one of those cards that, yeah, I just wanted to add to my collection. Now, this is a case, I think the condition of this card is really good. The centering is not perfect. You can see here just from the naked eye that the border on the top is a bit bigger than the border on the bottom. I think the right-left centering to my naked eye looks pretty good. But again, this is a kind of interesting question. Like, is this worth, now they were charging just market price as a raw card. So market price of this card is a little under, it's when I bought it, actually, it was about $4.90. It's already gone up 40 bucks. Excuse me, actually, it's gone up $60 since I made the trade. And so part of me feels like this card is probably only, I mean, I don't know. Who knows if it's only going to go up? I mean, who knows what the Pokemon hobby will look like? But I feel like I got in at $4.90. It's already, I think, at $5.50. Now, it's not gradable from a, I mean, again, because the centering is not perfect, I would say this is not gradable. The condition looks good, but again, what do you think? Like, should I have held out for, I mean, part of me just feels like any copy that like is remotely gradable that exists in the world has probably been submitted. And so to find a raw copy, which is what I want a raw copy for my binder, not for grading. Again, this is kind of a, I'm just saying, and you know, part of me feels okay, even though I didn't pull $500 out of my wallet to buy this card. I took sealed items that I paid much less for 5 years ago, and I turned it into this card. And so I feel pretty good about that kind of as a trade. But again, there is that moment that just that part of me that's like, but it's not perfect. It's not gradable as a 10. So, but anyway, it's a beautiful card, and it's really exciting to have this in my collection. So all that same logic that I just talked through apply to this last card. You might be able to guess. It is the Gengar VMAX Alt Art from Fusion Strike. So this is a card that, again, it is one of those top chase cards from the Sword and Shield era. And similar with the Giratina V card, this card is not perfectly centered. I am not an expert, but it just is not quite there from what I can tell just from the naked eye. And so it's another question of like, is a raw copy of this worth market price? Now, market price on this is another case of like, even though this trade is only a few weeks old, the market price on this card has gone up by $40 since I made the trade. And so even if the sealed product that I traded has gone up, there's, you know, I feel like I've traded them for cards that are going to stand the test of time. These are among the top chase cards of the Sword and Shield era. And there's also just something really satisfying and gratifying about having this card in my collection, about checking that box, about being that much closer to having a complete Sword and Shield master set of all the sets of Sword and Shield. And again, it's just such a cool card. And again, we're at a moment now where, you know, I'm not going to be opening a lot of Fusion Strike. You can't find Fusion Strike anymore. I do actually have a handful of Fusion Strike packs like sitting around. But again, the chance of pulling this, I've opened like so many packs of Fusion Strike, just never lucky enough to pull this. And so yeah, this is the same kind of calculus. Is a raw copy that's maybe not perfectly centered worth it? Now, in some ways you could think of, I think the value I got for the UPC is more or less the value of this card at time of trade. And so in some ways you could think about it, would you trade a Celebrations Ultra Premium Collection for a raw copy of Gengar VMAX Alt Art that's not perfectly centered, but that's otherwise in near mint condition? I don't know, was that a trade you would do? And I'm really curious your thoughts on all this stuff. And I know I'm talking a lot, we're almost at 20 minutes with this video, but there's a lot of considerations that go into this. And so that is the process that I've been going through. Now I have more sealed stuff, and I'll continue to think about, you know, does it make sense? But I feel like, again, on one hand, I feel really good about turning 2 bins worth of sealed stuff into these 4 cards that I wanted for my master set collection. But on the other hand, there's always that tinge of like, not so much that, you know, those products will go up versus these cards may or may not go up. I mean, I think these cards are good investments. But just, you know, the fact that these aren't necessarily, you know, PSA 10 quality cards, even though they're in near mint condition, if they're not centered perfectly, you know, would you do that trade? Would you trade, would you trade Celebration sealed stuff that I went through for these cards. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy with it. I mean, I kind of have to live with it, and I'm excited to have these cards. I mean, I'm going to focus on that. Like I have these cards now, which is very exciting. But anyway, there's lots of things that go into this. And so I'm curious your thoughts, please. I would really love to know, would you have done this trade? What did I leave out? What am I missing? What advice can you give me so that the next time I can do an even better job? But anyway, I'm excited to reveal these cards, add them to my seal collection, and yeah, we'll have more videos. Again, this channel is about my collection journey, and this is part of it. So tell me what you think, and we'll have more videos coming at you really soon. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.